So it's come out in Der Spiegel, which is a magazine in Germany, that some of the biggest clubs in Europe. You happy with that?
I know Sam, and I know he definitely just wanted to do. What do you want to do?
No, I don't
Der
do
Spiegel. I knew it. Wanted it out, wouldn't it? It was in there a little bit.
It was in it.
Well, you did it for him then, Flav. So it's come out in Der Spiegel that some of the biggest clubs, not the best clubs, the biggest clubs in Europe have had a meeting about a proposed new competition known as coined as the Super League. In terms of teams involved in England, 5 of the current top 6 are linked to be in it, and you can see it on your screen now. The proposed Super League would have 16 teams, and these are the teams in it: Real Madrid, Barcelona, Bayern Munich, Man United, Liverpool, Man City, Chelsea, Arsenal, PSG, Juventus, AC Milan, Inter Milan, Roma, Atletico, Dortmund and Marseille. And this might happen in 2021. So Flav and Sam are with me now. Of course, QPR unlikely to be chosen to be a guest.
They're on the B list.
Yeah, more of a founding father, which is what's going to happen here. You're going to have these founding members and then some guests as it goes on, which just makes me want to be sick in my own mouth. Man United will be in it, Sam. Spurs supposedly won't be in it, and it would affect probably Spurs more than most clubs in Europe, I would imagine. There's so many different aspects to it. I'm going to kind of just go through it now, and then there are so many talking points because it just leads to so many different complications. So the proposed breakaway European competition will see 16 teams have the option to leave their domestic league and football association. The competition would be introduced by 2021, with members also no longer competing in the Champions League or Europa League. The 11 founding members would be joined by 5 initial guests, which was those guests that were highlighted there. The membership would be guaranteed for 20 years with no relegation possible in that time. And the breakaway league was first mooted in 2016 when Europe's elite clubs expressed an issue with the division of revenue with their respective domestic leagues. Now, I just think the best way to go through it is because there are so many questions that come through this, and we asked you guys on Twitter as well. Your thoughts on it. There's some cracking comments on this as well, because everyone kind of gets quite passionate about this one.
Yeah.
But there's some great talking points here. So let's just go through them one by one. So first of all, what are your immediate thoughts on the idea of a Super League? Sam, I'd like to go to you first, mate.
Fuck that. That might be
Didn't expect that.
a cruder way.
Because your team
sort of
would benefit.
Why would Manchester United benefit? We're already the second most. If you're talking about monetary terms, which is the only reason a Super League would come about, United are already the second most valuable sports brand or team in the world. So going there wouldn't mean that Manchester United would make more money. And from a fan's perspective, we've already got tons of money. I mean, what would we have to gain as a fan from United joining the league, other than the fact that we play all these teams every week? But
okay, yeah. So I'll come back to something on that. We've got Flav as a Spurs fan, and it looks like Spurs wouldn't be in this initially.
Yeah, I absolutely wouldn't want to be a part of this at all. I'm glad that we're the only one of the top 6 that aren't a part of it. I don't think any part of this Super League really is going to benefit supporters. I think broadly, I think the only way it can work is if this new competition usurps the Champions League and the Europa League, and that becomes less important to these clubs, and therefore makes that competition less powerful. But what it does in that instance is remove some of the power that FIFA and UEFA have, but it also gives massively increased revenue to clubs that already have a huge advantage over the rest of the league. If Spurs, I already think that Spurs have an unfair advantage over the rest of the Premier League because of the size of our club and the fact that we're much more likely to qualify for the Champions League than, say, Aston Villa or Everton or anyone else who's previously tried to break that top 4.
Yeah.
Nothing good comes from this formation of this league from a fan's perspective. From a business perspective, for Man United as a business, for Arsenal, Real Madrid, it makes complete sense. They have complete control over the revenue coming into their football club. And what are these football clubs? They're not groups of memberships. They're businesses. They're owners with shareholders. They care about the money and the bottom line. And from that perspective, you think, why wouldn't they want to form this league?
Yeah, I think that's a very good point, because Sam, you're saying like how well Man United are doing financially at the moment and where they are in that pecking order. What's more important, the pecking order or the amount of money that you're making? Because if you go into that Super League, as it says here, the Champions League and Europa League wouldn't be part of that.
In both.
So that takes away a lot of games. So that's another question that we'll kind of get to is, should they be allowed to carry on in the Premier League? And this ultimately is like a new Champions League for these guys that they're always in for the next 20 years. If you are in that, there's no relegation, you're only playing against huge clubs, you are going to make more money even if you don't win it.
Yeah, because I mean, it doesn't matter where it happens in the world. If you get Man United playing Liverpool, Real Madrid playing Barcelona, you're going to sell out a 100,000 seat stadium. That's what the clubs are going to be looking at it as. But I don't know, I'm just looking at it from a completely selfish fan's point of view, which I think has to happen with this. It shouldn't happen. But the scary part is if you look at the Champions League, it used to be just the champions of every league in Europe playing against each other. Look at the size of it now. The World Cup is going to be expanded from 32 to 48 teams. Not 48 teams, sorry. No one really wanted that to happen. Euro 2016 got increased from 16 to 24 teams. No one really wanted it to happen from a fan perspective. It happened. If the powers that be want this to happen, it will happen.
Yeah.
No matter how much we shout
this
about
is the
it.
thing, the powers that be aren't, it's changing. The power shifts are changing here. It's no longer FIFA or UEFA, it's the football clubs themselves, which is interesting because...
And the governing bodies of each country as well are irrelevant now.
Yeah, the Premier League and the FA will be mighty concerned about what's going on here because, all right, in the first instance, they have the option to remain in the domestic league and stay in this league. They can't play in the Champions League, that's the only rule here, but you can stay in your domestic league. So in that instance, it won't change the domestic structure much, although it does make the revenue share completely unfair. I mean, it's unfair now, but it's even worse. You know, it'll be much more like the system in Spain where Real Madrid and Barcelona take 80% of the split of the revenue, of TV revenue. But just going back to something you said, Sam, about 100,000 people watching these games wherever they play, that might be the case, but that's not even their first thought, in my opinion. Their first thought is, how many eyes do we get on this around the world? Forget match day going fans. Forget people going to Old Trafford or Anfield or Stamford Bridge. Forget them. They're not important to us anymore. Yeah. What we realise through the global syndication of the Premier League is that the international viewer is much more infinitely valuable than the match day going fan. Yeah. And as that continues to grow and as football becomes more of a monopolised sport for viewership across the world, then the clubs will naturally be drawn towards that global market. So it doesn't matter whether there's 50,000 or 100,000 in these stadiums when there's 100 million people watching.
I think something you've got to point out as well is that if you're looking at the generations of football fans and the generations that's coming up now, take Ronaldo and Real Madrid, for example. When he left Real Madrid lost millions of Twitter followers.
4 million.
They lost so many on Facebook, whereas Juventus gained millions. So this generation of fans that are coming through now, some are more aligned to following a player than following a football club. Yeah. So this new generation of football fans, if that's what they follow, then they're not going to be too offended if this Super League, it's effectively it's like playing a game of FIFA for them. Yeah,
it's catering for the globalization of the game, isn't it? That's what it works for. It works for fans who don't go to the football, who want to see great games. And you saw it in the Fulham Huddersfield game, that, people tweeting or speaking about those games as a lesser game than those big games, those big Super Sunday games. Football fans now are kind of going, oh, that's not up to scratch. And that, unfortunately, is the way that it's going. So I understand, and I've certainly said it on One for the Weekend in the past, that it's inevitable. This is inevitable because you see the same thing in the Champions League where the payment of the TV revenue, as well as there's more. That's a 50-50 split of the TV revenue as well as the performances of the clubs. And when that plays a part,
you mean
and
in
it's
the Premier
about
League?
Those 5 mark. No, I mean in the Champions League.
Right.
So in the Champions League, if you're, we had a video on it a while ago on Bullshit. But if FC Basel finished above Liverpool in their group, they got into the last 16, got through that next round. Liverpool finished third. They beat them out of it. Yeah. Liverpool made double the amount of money that Basel did.
Because of the eyes.
Because of the eyes. Because there's a 50-50 split of the performance money that you get for the points that you get, but there's 50% made from and there's percentages within that 50% based on the TV revenue of your league. Yeah. And so because the Swiss league isn't a big league, regardless of how well they do that one time, they're never going to plug the gap. And this is something that you've seen. We've been watching this for the last 25 years. So for me, in terms of moving on to the domestic competition and how that will affect it, when the Premier League started, the idea of the Premier League was that you will have this jewel in the crown, but the money will be filtered down to all the other clubs to have a really competitive product that helps every football club, all 92, not just the first 20.
Right, that's true, and that's the exact reason why they want to split, because they don't want to share it. Why would they?
Yeah.
It should be. It's baked into the rules of our domestic game because it's good for the health of our game, but they don't want it. They want to split. Ian Ayre of Liverpool actually said he wants to develop the Spanish model where we have control of our rights depending on how much of audience we bring in. Again, they're businessmen looking at supply and demand. They're saying, well, we're bringing 100 million listeners, 100 million viewers to the Premier League. Burnley bring in 50,000 plus the people that go and watch it. Why should we share our revenue with them?
No, but so you're saying that a big reason why these bigger teams would want to split away from, well, not teams, the businesses, to gain more revenue and to gain a bigger split. But if you went into a league like that, it would have to be split completely equally for it to actually happen. There's no way that Arsenal would settle for having a smaller percentage than, say, Chelsea or United. If that's the case, the amount that would have to make for every club to make more than what they're already currently making in the domestic leagues, especially Premier League clubs anyway, would be absolutely phenomenal. Like ridiculous amount of money.
And I think they think that they can get it.
Well, and I think
I'm
they
sure
probably
they've
can,
done the
and
maths.
I think there will inevitably be this Super League, and I think there'll be inevitably this massive split between this Super League, and I think that's just the first step. That it's a Champions League, and you still have this domestic league. They will go, you will all go, and the rest of us will be left. Now, the big question is, as a football fan, what do you care about? Do you care about prosperity and the money and being the sort of, the big fish, or do you care about competition and hope? And because the core values of sport are an equal playing field where whoever has the luck on that day or gets the tactics right on that day, that's why in athletics things like drugs and stuff like that are so important, because it's integral to the values of the sport. The values of the sport in football are being totally lost now. Yeah. So for me as a QPR fan, go. I couldn't care less, because as a fan who goes to watch my team, I'm currently in a situation where if you get promoted, you're in this world where the ceiling is 8th. Whereas, so if you get rid of those teams, the eighth place is that's now top 2. That's now could be a playoff win to go into a grand final to win the whole thing. All these things are great. For me as a QPR fan, my worst moments as a football fan have been in the Premier League. My best 2 moments, one has been in Hillsborough when we're in League One, and one in a playoff final or in the Championship. So for me, the further away they are, and the more the rest of the league becomes about competition instead of money, the better it will be for us fans who go to the game.
You're naively thinking that if these 5 teams don't leave the Premier League, that another 5 teams will just, within the next 10-15 years, replace them as the big behemoth clubs in the Premier League that have such a bigger right. Spurs are in the perfect position to do that. And blow away, and all of a sudden you're still chasing 7th or 8th, but it's not United.
Do you know what though? I would hope that the other teams could have an understanding that I think you'll have a problem maybe with Everton, Spurs, maybe teams like Aston Villa, those big clubs, that Leeds, that want to get back to those top 5 teams to then maybe creep up there to make the silly amount of money. But what you might see is a lot of teams that have been burnt by the problems that have come from the Premier League and actually might go, hang on, let's, once bitten, twice shy, let's understand, let's have a safe product and a good competitive product and see what that can bring for everyone.
What I predict will happen, I think maybe you're being idealistic, not naive. You can always look at, human beings to actually learn from their mistakes and build something better. I think in the first instance, what you'll see is that the Premier League as a brand would probably go bankrupt without those people, because without all the eyes that they've syndicated the brand across the world, that money wouldn't be there anymore. You'd see a complete massive exodus of the top players from the remaining clubs in there. The managers would leave also probably.
Yeah. What I would say to that,
or they would accept
a
massive reduction in wages. But what you'd be left with would be the game would again become domestic.
That's my point. Yeah.
Yeah, and that you'll have clubs that rely on the match day going fan as the lifeblood of their football club. It won't be the Premier League. It won't be a team that could support having Ronaldo or Modric or Bale and all these amazing players, Harry Kane. It won't be that. It will be a lesser level, but it will be harking back to the much more competitive days of before the Premier League, where football seemed to be a little bit more in touch with the common man.
Yeah, and also look at AFC Wimbledon. Look, they were this Premier League club. All that got taken away from them. They had to go back to the roots of that community as a club. They've then gone on this incredible journey, but winning that first league or the second league or the third league as they made their way through the leagues.
Yeah.
It didn't go. They didn't go. Yeah, but Marcus Gale's not playing.
So we've said
no
that
one cares about the quality.
The glory that people feel isn't smaller the lower down the leagues. The feeling that Sam had when United won the Champions League was a comparable or exact same feeling as when you qualified to the Premier League. It's just relative to your football club.
Totally.
I get that the task of that is more difficult and happens less often. But that moment, that feeling of saving yourself from relegation or winning the Champions League is very similar.
Yeah.
And just pure joy. And that's, I think people get caught up in this idea of what the Premier League brand has become and how successful it is and how beautiful the product the Premier League is. No doubt, I look at it and think this is a classy job they've put together.
Yeah.
You look at it, the production value is incredible.
But it's getting stretched.
It is getting stretched. But I'm saying is the enjoyment from the fans, that certainly the ones that go to games each week, won't be any less because the top 5 clubs, and even if Tottenham left as well, And I think domestically the football will be it won't be as good, but I think
the reality is that for say those 5 English clubs do leave and they do go away from the Premier League, every other team in the English right the whole way down, all 87 that still remain would benefit from it. The English game would be a lot better. Okay. But for those 5 clubs, for the fans of those 5 clubs, they're going to be in a minority. Like I would be in a minority to say I wouldn't want this, because the majority of football fans in England would probably want this.
I don't know. I think you're wrong. I think you're wrong. I think the majority of fans in England wouldn't want it, but I think potentially fans from other countries who are less invested in the rituals of going to the game.
But I tell you what, when it becomes as it might become so sanitised.
It would make it more. It would make it a hell of a lot more.
You might have these. You'll have these gigantic clubs playing each other, making all this money. And yes, of course, you'll have the global fan base of these teams, but you'll also have a lot of fans who have deep roots. Like you're creating franchises here, and when you're creating franchises, you're turning away a little bit from a community, because these, especially when it's a European league, because they won't be able to go to the away games, and when they can't go to the away games, they'll look over and see a team in the English domestic league who they could follow every single week, because this is a huge thing. If you think of the 50s and the 60s. This was such a huge thing for people to be able to do at the end of a difficult week, to go and watch their team, that tribal aspect of it, and belonging to something. I would not be surprised if it got to a point where you still had a lot of people, certainly in this country, going, so what? And turning away from it because you want to be there and feel it.
I think generally this will actually help football. If you look at the top 4, the top 5 leagues in Europe are monopolised by 1 or 2 teams. Juve's won it 8 on the bounce. PSG are absolutely steamrolling the league, and so they should, because of the amount of money.
And sure,
Barcelona, Real Madrid, Man City, all of those top 5, apart from Leicester, the only anomaly that we've had.
And why are PSG founding members of this?
Because they're money. Because of the money.
Not because they haven't won a Champions League.
Yeah, exactly. What I want to ask, I've got a question. Do you think it will happen?
Yes.
And what form do you think that? How will that play out?
I think there'll be 2 steps to it. I think it will initially. They'll go, oh, we're not really sure, so they'll put their toe in, and they'll have this. They'll move away from the Champions League, because that's probably to a point that's a safe option. It's the Premier League money that the Premier League teams will be wary of moving away from. Yeah. And the other teams, because I think there's a great tweet here from someone. Sure, I've got it. I think it's Adam Smith. It's saying only 4 clubs gain from this: Bayern, Real, Barca, PSG. And those 4 will understand that at this moment in time, with the amount of money that's in the Premier League in comparison to those other domestic leagues, they would go, come on over for a second. Let's make it work for both of you, for both sides, and see the money that comes in. But the second step is that they will I would not be surprised, because if you're caught halfway between the two, they'll get a point where that's European Super League does look better, and because they'll still have their domestic games, and I think they'll make the jump, and then I hope it crumbles.
No, I think he's right in that it would be the Champions League and Europa League that would go first, and if that does work, then it will be a case of moving away from the National League. But I think a big question you've got to ask about this is, say for example, it does happen, and loads of people are opposed to it, loads of people are for it. I would watch it for the start because it will be exciting, it will be new. I'll go, what is this? But then 6 years down the line, after I've watched United play Liverpool 4 times a season, am I really going to be that interested in it? Even if I'm anywhere in the world, from Bangladesh to Pakistan to England.
I think you probably would.
You're saying it would never lose its appeal because you can never get relegated. It's the same teams doing the same thing every single year. I know that's what football is.
It will get sanitised. It will get diluted a little bit, and I think you would get to a point where there'll be a lot of fans who like being the top 4, the top 6 that everyone talks about at the moment. But if they then go to this Super League, they're going to be a team in the bottom 4 every single league. But I also think that I would be amazed if they didn't implement some kind of similar system to American sports, where you have not essentially a draft system, but maybe a specific split on the amount of money and revenue, so that you all get the same transfer money to spend, so that
I think
because there's no relegation.
I think the difference between that is that they're not leaving anyone behind in the NFL. It was always set up that way, wasn't it? So the fact that they're leaving teams behind in the Premier League and essentially destroying that brand is a major issue. If I was the Premier League, I'd be saying to those 5 clubs, if you choose to do this, you're never coming back.
Yeah.
You will never play in the Premier League ever again.
That would be a really good stance to have.
Yeah, even if they renege later on, they should come out and say you will absolutely not be allowed back in this league.
Because the last moment of fan power is in that ultimatum. Because if you make that step and move away for greed, that is it. You're not coming back. If that happens, the fans will be. They'd be outraged if they were willing to put their club in that kind of danger.
This is ultimately up to the fans of each club and how well they can mobilise. I can't imagine Liverpool fans, or actually Man United, none of them. I can't imagine fans of any of those top 5 clubs actually standing for any of this.
We know you're calling James idealistic. That's the most idealistic thing you've ever said. It is the fans have got nothing to do with it. If it happens, because the businesses want it to happen.
But we're talking about mass boycotts. I know it's never happened really.
But I can see that happening.
That kind of thing. It would have to reach that level, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Because they know they're a big fan base. The Manchester United fans could go. They would all go to Salford or what was it, FC United. You could have 5 or 6 new teams starting in the mirror image of it, starting it again. They'd make their way back up.
Well, exactly. It's kind of the story of FC United, because so many United fans were so opposed to the Glazers takeover and what that meant for United. They made another club which is now coming up into the football league.
Just before we finish, can I just read out a couple of interesting tweets we had in reaction to a tweet we sent out? It says, Sam Moxon, he said, I would want to watch the Super League to watch the big matches and see the best knock each other out and the best teams fight for the next round. I like that Man United haven't played Juventus for years before this season makes it exciting. Champions League group stages are the worst bit. Why do I want to watch that week in, week out? So he's kind of for it. And then Liverpool fan says, no, I wouldn't. Eunice says, no, I wouldn't. The reason the big games are very good to watch is because they don't happen very often and the excitement builds. But if you have the big teams playing each week and week out, it will lose its excitement and eventually it will become boring.
Remember it a few years ago when Real Madrid drew Barca, I think it was the UEFA Champions League semi, and they also played each other in the Cup, and they played each other in the league. So there was like 5 El Clasicos in about a 2-month period. But something that I want to point out before the end is that Jeremy Wilson, he's the chief sports writer at The Telegraph, he wrote a piece on this last night. He's actually saying that both United and Arsenal are strongly opposed to this, and he's also said, quoting a Whitehall source, didn't say who it is, saying that the government actually opposes it too. So you're going to have the government and the main clubs, and he's also saying that UEFA's president, Alexander Seferin, promised to fight against the idea.
He bloody will.
So if you've got...
They're all against it because it's damaging them.
You're saying the fans, if they have the ability to do mass boycotts, that might do something. Maybe. But maybe UEFA, the government, FA, and maybe this whole collective coming together. Together.
I'm interested to see what that Man United and Arsenal thing was about, because my understanding was that the representatives of all of these clubs at that meeting. So
Having a meeting doesn't mean you absolutely agree with that.
Yeah.
You want to hear what's going on.
If anyone can let us know in the comments below what their involvement is, or anything you've read, and let us know about Man United and Arsenal. Obviously, let us know what you think of it in total.
Yeah, totally. It's fascinating. It certainly gets me rolled up, Flav.
I know, you were a bit riled, weren't you? I
Yeah,
didn't
I
like
just
it.
thought.
Bit flustered.
I just kind of go, well, don't piss off then.
Yeah,
Piss off.
Yeah, I'm like that completely. I'm fine with it.
Yeah.
Just football in England will never die. There'll always be it in some form. It may not be in what we've become used to, and the lovely Sky sort of packaging. It'll be very different, but it'll still be our game, and we love it.
Okay. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you've enjoyed this video, then hit the like button, and why not consider subscribing to Ball Street. We'll see you very soon.